However, rolling contracts don't pay very good money, and secondly, we have stuff that needs to get done. So I need to get into our field and start doing some things, and I need to get the forage harvester out as well. And Cameo, good morning. I am enjoying Railroader intensely. It's my sort of game. It's not so much the factor of railway management, which, yeah, okay, that's kind of fun, but it's the shunting puzzle. I look at it and say, okay, I need to make as few moves as possible to get this task complete. So and I don't care if, something I said on Kerbo's video the other day was, there's a concept of you never do facing drops. So if you come to a yard and you have to put the car on the front of the locomotive to insert it into the yard, you don't do that. What you do is you always make trailing drops, which means if you're at Whittier with a load of stuff going to Ella's a facing drop. So you would actually take a train to Bryson with all the stuff for Bryson, all the stuff for Ella, all the facing stuff. So I think the oil, the fuel oil drop at Whittier. And you would drive all the way to Bryson. You'd run the train, you'd run the locomotive round, and then as you haul back to all points along the line, you will drop trailing. So you pull into a loop and drop the cars you need to where they need to be, but you don't have to maneuver around them. And the reason for that, and the reason why railroad companies did that in real life, was because you're blocking the main a lot of the time when you're making these drops. And if you're blocking the main, then you can't run passengers through. And passenger traffic is far more important than freight. So I've taken to running, as I said, figuring out when I leave Whittier exactly what I want in the sequence of things, so that so that we end up with exactly the easiest drops I can make every time. I've got a switcher at Bryson which can collect all the stuff in preparation for when a freight train comes through, or it'll take the Bryson drops and it will do all the drops while the larger locomotives are running through. I'm not shunting with a consolidation or a Mikado or something like that. They're not really built for it. So making the run with a big train with lots of cars, and I have hauled some stupid loads. I think I was hauling 32 cars on 2,800 tons behind the second consolidation, and it was not happy. It wasn't not happy because it couldn't pull it. It could pull the train. The problem was setting the brakes and releasing them on 28 cars. There is a limit to what a locomotive can do, and it's usually how many cars it can release the brakes on happily. I even kept the 10-wheeler for absolute age because it's kind of handy. But I got to the point where I was asking it to release the brakes on 15 cars, and it just sat there and said, yeah, okay. Come back to me next week. Go make a cup of tea. This is going to take a while. So I'm slowly upgrading equipment. I went up to the large mogul, replaced the 10-wheeler, because it has the power, it has the fuel, and it has the ability to at least haul 20 cars and release the brakes on them. But yeah, it's a fun game, and obviously still in development. I would highly recommend it. I've put way too many hours on it already. And I'm only playing single player. I haven't got into multiplayer yet. Well, I'm now at the point where I probably need to open up the buy the early line off of the Atlanta Corporation, whatever it is, because my exchange yard is not big enough for the amount of stuff I've got coming in or going out. I just ran through 6 o'clock in the morning and I had both lines absolutely full. Like, you can't get another car on the line, and I still ended up with 6 cars not delivered. I couldn't, I didn't have room for them in the exchange. I'm assuming if I buy the line going back to the east, that exchange is going to be bigger. So that might be my next goal. Yeah, silver. Open the tractor silver, it takes forever to do all the work that needs to be done. Yeah, last time I checked I was over 50, and then I put another 2 hours in this morning. So I'm not quite to 70 yet. I think Mrs. Ose is a little annoyed with how much time I have put into it. Although that was another fun conversation I had on Discord. I'm a member of Disturbed Simulations Discord. And people have been talking about the new Horus. Is it Horus? No. Oh, I can't remember. But there is I believe it's a Japanese company that makes a farm sim joystick and steering wheel combination that costs about $400. And there is the Thrustmaster farm stick, which the stick itself is only $100. If you add the steering wheel and all of the paraphernalia to attach them to the desk, that can send you back about $360, a little bit cheaper than the other panel. And then you've got the Logitech wheel and side panel, and the side panel for that is only $100 or $160, a little bit more than the Thrustmaster farm stick. But the Thrustmaster farm stick, they sold out for Christmas, so you're probably looking January, February before that comes in. Now my side panel, I bought it in when I bought Farm Sim 17, so I've had it 6 turning 7 years. And quite frankly, I would suggest that the quality isn't the greatest. However, it's lasted 7 years. Now the buttons are getting a little bit janky. Sometimes you push a button and it triggers twice. Other times you push the button and it doesn't work at all. So I'm actively looking for a replacement side panel of some type. I don't know whether I want to go with the Thrustmaster, but that said, I would not be averse to having another Logitech joystick side panel if it lasted me another 7 years. That puts me into 2030 and beyond. So people were having a conversation with the pros and cons, and so I said, well, I've had a side panel and I've had it for 7 years, which equates to, looks up the amount of time I've played Farm Sim 17, 19 and 23, about 4,600 hours. And left it at that. I came back a couple of hours later, and the first response to that one was, I was going to make fun of you, but I looked at mine and I've got over 5,000 hours just on Farm Sim 19 and 22. So sort of, yeah, 4,000 hours on all the Farm Sims. Or all the Farm Sims since Farm Sim 17. But as I said, I mean, that Logitech side panel, it's actually a Cytec side panel, not the Logitech model. And it has done me, yeah, it's done me proud. I am very happy with how well it's held up, especially since when I bought I bought the set, I bought a wheel and side panel, and the wheel lasted 2 weeks and started shorting, and whatever USB circuit it was plugged into, it would short out the other socket as well. So that wasn't good. Contacted Cytec. I contacted the technical support. I can't remember whether it was Cytec or Logitech, because I bought it just as Logitech was buying out Cytec, but you could only get the Cytec farm stick, side panel, basically because Logitech weren't geared up to make any new ones. So, as I said, I contacted their technical support, and they said, okay, you need to destroy both the steering wheel and the side panel by cutting the USB wires. Send us a photo evidence that you have done this, and we'll send you a new one. So I did that, and they sent me a new one, and I'm not kidding, 3 weeks to the day, the second steering wheel went bad. Well, at that point I said, 2 out of 2, exactly the same problem, exactly the same issue, exactly the same failure, and exactly the same amount of time it took to get there. So I just said, I'm done. Went out and bought myself a G29, whatever the PlayStation version of the G27, 29, 29, G923, whatever. Bought one of those. So that's my primary wheel, and that's still working fine. I didn't contact technical support to tell them their wheel sucked again. And I've kept the side panel because I couldn't find anything wrong with the side panel. The side panel has worked very well. So as I said, I've kept the side panels for 7 years. There might be another one in the basement with a USB cable cut. I could possibly take it apart, put in a new USB cable, and go with that. But yeah, and that could be my cheap option. Figure out how to replace the USB cable and just I should probably engine off that button there. Don't need the shop lights on. Okay, I want to ride my bicycle. That one there. Customize. Field roller. So field roller, grass roller I haven't used, and then mulching roller I have used. So I can freely switch between field and mulching roller, but you have to watch that because obviously it defaults to the field roller. You can see the difference in the wheel texture than the mulcher that we just had on. Okay, I now need this thing. And I only came into Farm Sim 17 basically when it was released, through a guy who used to be a World of Warships contributor, and he decided to try out Farming Simulator on Goldcrest. So I figured that actually doesn't look too bad. I'd looked at it. It was kind of like, I think back in 2007, Microsoft Train Sim came out, and I looked at that and I thought, how exciting can be driving trains? How exciting can driving trains actually be? And I really wasn't. I looked at it and I thought, that's got to be the most boring game ever. A flight sim I understood. You can take an aeroplane and you can fly it anywhere and do anything. A train's on two sets of metal rail, a set of metal rails. It can't go anywhere or do anything without being allowed to. And you run past a signal and you can't, game over, you've ended. Signal passed at danger. But I think it was just as Dovetail took over Train Sim. I bought that and I thought, because it was $1 on Steam, and I understand why it was $1 on Steam, because they make all their money from the DLC, and in a way the Train Sim Classic that we have today is a very intriguing game model. They update it regularly. Once a year they do a graphics update. They did a 32-bit to 64-bit update, or was it 16 to 32, whatever. But they do an update. They'll do graphical updates, they'll do procedural updates, but they update the game in some way every year, and they introduce new routes and locomotives for the game, which they will charge you for. You get the update free of charge, which is brilliant. So I bought Train Sim in 2013, and every year I've had a technical upgrade of the game. I haven't necessarily paid for the routes that come with it. It makes sense because they package 3 routes and charge you the price of 2. And if you're buying the game new, you get 3 routes and the game. But technically, you're paying the cost of 2 regular standard routes, whether it be English, European or American. Usually they'll package an English, a European and an American. However, if you never want to drive European trains, then that's a route you're never going to use. So was it really worth it to get 1 free for the price of 2? But the advantage with those updates is all of the DLC is always backwards compatible. So I don't have to go out and buy my DLC again. I don't have to go to the mod websites and download a different set of mods. They always work with the base game, regardless of what technical updates they do to it, whether it be graphical or whatever. And it's something I'm I kind of like that they did it that way, and I'm kind of sad that Giants don't do it that way, because if Giants updated the core engine but kept everything else relatively the same, then you could have mods from 2013 running in FarmSim still, but you would have the graphical updates and everything else that you got as the game progressed, as the game got updated. I mean, yes, mods from 2013 in Train Sim do kind of look a bit bad because they don't have the polygon count that Train Sim Classic 2024 supports. So it's not, you can see the age of the older content, but you still own it. You can still use it on the latest version of the game, because there isn't a latest version of the game. It is the game. Truck Sim, American Truck Sim and ETS2, European. Both games are getting some core updates, but all of the maps still work on it, and they're going back. They're revamping Switzerland for European and California rework, and frankly California needs it. Arizona could use one as well, but it's allowing the players to keep what they paid for in the game, even though the game is getting better. FarmSim doesn't do that. You lose everything every time they reset. Now, that said, Dovetail have done... they still support Train Simulator Classic, what they call Classic, but they introduced Train Sim World, which was sort of their next generation game. And quite frankly, I'm not as impressed, because their upgrade path has been, here's Train Sim World. The very next year, here's Train Sim World 2. All of your Train Sim World stuff will work on it, but you can't buy any new DLC for Train Sim World. You have to buy Train Sim World 2 DLC, and because of that, you have to buy Train Sim World 2, which is another $40 game or $50 game. And then the following year, might be 2 years, they said, hey, we've updated the game again. We're now on Train Sim World 3. You now have to pay us another $50 to get the latest version of the game, so that you can use the new DLC that we're bringing out this year. And having lived with what they did for Train Sim Classic, I just got fed up. I got Train Sim World 2, I played that, and I've had a lot of fun playing it, don't get me wrong. But when they said, hey, here's Train Sim World 3, I said, well, stuff that. And then the following year they said, hey, here's Train Sim World 4. I said, right, I'm buying Train Sim World 3 because you're only selling it for $20. Or, for $5. And, I'm a version of Train Sim World behind what the developers would like me to be, because I'm not playing that game. At least Farm Sim, we get 2 to 3 years out of it before they decide to, well, we're throwing away what we had and starting over again. And when you start over again with Farm Sim, the big selling point of Farm Sim is you have the mods and you have the modding community. Day one of the new version of Farm Sim, you don't have any of that. So now you have to sit around and wait for the modders to get approved and done. So if you want to play vintage Farm Sim, you have to wait like 6 months before the first serious quantity of vintage tractors and machinery is available, that you can actually play a reasonable vintage farm. I'm not too far. I mean, I'm not an agricultural guy, and at the time, at the time that the original Farm Sim came out, I sort of looked at it and said, well, yeah, okay, but how much fun can it be, planting crops, doing fields, harvesting crops? And it wasn't till this, World of Warships contributor showcased the game on his channel, and you just thought, well, this is something different. I picked it up, and let's see what happens. And it was the one and only video he ever produced on Farm Sim. It did look a lot of fun, so I bought a farming simulator, and I've played it 4,600 hours since then, 4,800 hours, whatever it worked out at. But it's a fun game, and I think in similar ways, Railroader is a fun game. It's not a game for everyone, and how much fun can it be driving a train around? But it's not the driving the train around. It's the logical problems, making the shape fit. You can go about it by not thinking, and then it takes you ages to achieve anything because you didn't plan the train before you left. But you can get to the point where, okay, if I arrange for 3 freight trains to thunder down the tracks, I'm going to have my biggest, least thirsty or largest fuel tank locomotive run from the exchange to the furthest point, and then I'm going to have smaller locomotives doing small drops between. And while those vehicles are just running the line, and the AI is taking care of them, I can do the nitty-gritty in each of the local yards, and I can make sure all the stuff that needs to get picked up on the return is ready for them when the big freight pulls into the yard. I can either use the local switcher to drop things on the back of it, or I can just pull past the freight yard and then reverse onto the stuff that needs to go and take it with me, and then AI just proceeds on to the next yard.